Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Dora the Explorer Giant Cupcake Princess Cake tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this gorgeous Dora the Explorer Princess Cake using a giant cupcake from a giant cupcake mold. Tools and equipment that I will be using today: I've got a cake board that I've just pre-iced. I always ice my cake boards, it's fantastic for presentation, and we do have a tutorial on how to ice a cake board on our channel, so you can check that out. I've got a serrated edge knife or a bread knife. I'm using a palette knife for just spreading my icing, but you can also use a spatula or a regular knife. And I've got quite a longish, sharp knife. I've got my Dora the Explorer toy that I've pre-purchased. This is going to be the centerpiece, and I've gone with Dora as a snow princess. I've got some of our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting, and I've tinted that a nice, kind of a light pink colour. I think it dresses blue on the toy, but I'm going to go with a light pink because I just prefer pink. I've paired that in a disposable piping bag with a rose piping tip. Now, if you don't have a rose piping tip, don't worry. I will show you a couple of other ways that you can decorate this at the end of this tutorial, other cakes that I've decorated using a 1M tip and also using fondant, so you'll get a few photo examples at the end, but the rose tip is what we're using today. And I've got a little bit more of this perfectly pipeable pink frosting, and I've got that just in another piping bag with just a large open nozzle at the end. So you don't need to have that in a piping bag. I'm just going to use that for filling my cupcake, and it's just a little bit neater than smearing it on with a spatula. I've also got my giant cupcake, which I've pre-baked. We're going to be using the giant cupcake from the silicone giant cupcake mold today, and we're going to form that into the shape of our Dora Princess dress. So let's get started. I'm going to take my serrated edge knife and that bottom half of the cupcake, and I'm just going to flatten off the base. Well, it's actually the top, but it's going to become our base. I've got a bowl off to the side for all of my bits and pieces and scraps, and I'll be using those to make cake pops. So don't throw them out, put them to good use, or at least eat them. The same again for the top of my giant cupcake. I'm just going to carve it off. That's a nice flat surface for me to work with. A little bit messy. If the kids are around, they'll certainly come in and have a little piece of leftover cake. Now just sit that on top, and what you want to do is you just want to, this is what I'm looking at from my sort of angle. So it looks a bit, I guess, like a mushroom, and I'm just going to carve around the edges so that it's the same size as the bottom of that cupcake. You can see there, mine's crumbling a little bit. Don't worry too much, but if you can, try and carefully cut around. If a little bit of it crumbles off, don't worry. We're going to be sort of sticking it all together with frosting anyway, so it's not going to be a big deal. Alright, so I've got a bit of a circus tent looking shape. That's going to form the basis for our Dora the Explorer princess dress. Pull off any excess, make sure that you're happy with the shape. Now I'm going to take that sharper knife and I'm going to cut a hole in the middle. It's not going to be the exact right size at this stage, it's just a bit of a guide hole. Be careful, notice I'm supporting the cake around the edges. You don't want that cake to crumble in half, so do support it as you're cutting around. Be careful not to stab yourself. And just cut out just a bit of a guide hole. It's going to vary depending on which Dora you choose to buy, whether you get the Snow Princess or whether you get her in her little beach outfit. Alright, we can tip out that excess. Now I'm just going to have a little tidy up of my area, and then we'll come back and we will get stacking and frosting. Alright, so I've had a little bit of a tidy up, and I've actually cut that bottom half in half again and popped it onto my cake board. To attach that to the cake board, I just popped down just a little blob of buttercream frosting. That's just going to stop it from moving around too much. So now it's time to get frosting. Those of you that followed us throughout Giant Cupcake Basics will be aware of pretty well most of these steps. So if you do have any questions about what I've been doing or any more in-depth about what I'm doing, please make sure that you go and check out our Giant Cupcake Basics series. As you can see, I've just piped on a bit of a swirl of frosting. I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm just going to spread it out just a little bit to the edges. The reason that I've piped it on is because it just picks up less crumbs You can use a Ziploc bag to pipe it on, or you can just spoon it on, but you'll get a few more crumbs. So when you cut the cake, it's not going to be as clean and as lovely inside. So taking the top half of your bottom half, I guess you'd call it, and do try to line up your little lines on the side. It just makes it look a little bit neater. Pop that on top, and then we're going to stack again. So just another swirl of frosting. I've got mine on, we call them Lazy Susans here, but they're cake decorating turntables, or call them a number of different things. It's basically just a little platter that spins. It makes my life so much easier when I'm decorating, and saves me having to turn the cake manually. Alright, so you're looking at a bit of a volcano, a bit of a pink and brown volcano there. Time to pop our last piece on top. See, she's starting to get quite tall. Now I want to crumb coat this before I decide to put Dora in. So I'm just going to pop her off to the side so she doesn't get knocked down. And I'm going to start by popping the piping bag into, just going to attach that on. I'm going to start by popping the piping bag into those creases, I guess the little gaps in between our layers. Try not to get too much mess on the board here, so try not to let that frosting fall off as it looks like it's trying to do here. And I'm just going to pipe a bit of a layer into that other crevice or that other gap. I'm going to take my palette knife and just smooth that off. So you really don't want too much to be falling onto the board because you're going to have to clean that up. So you can see there, I'm just backwards and forwards motion, and I'm pushing that frosting into those little gaps and into those little creases. That frosting is going to catch any excess crumbs and just fill in those holes so that we get a nice smooth surface all the way around. And you can just spread that lovely crumb coat. You can add a little bit more if you feel that you need it. As you start getting towards the bottom, don't go all the way to the bottom because you really don't want to smear icing on that board. And because we haven't trimmed off the edges of our giant cupcake, the sides, you should have a bit of almost like a very thin crust on your cupcake from where you've popped the non-stick cooking spray and from where it's actually been cooking on that silicone. Alright, so still not looking particularly princessy just yet. Now that I'm happy that I've got all of my layers stacked, I want to size up that hole properly. So I've done a relatively good job. You can see she's almost going to fit in there. I like to wait to do this, so I just do, I guess, my guide hole, but you don't want that top piece to split in half. If it does, it's salvageable. Just stick it back together with some frosting and it's all going to end up still being stuck in there in the end, but it's just a little bit neater and a little bit easier and less stressful if you can kind of get that frosting to hold it all together whilst you're cutting out your hole. Take your Dora, push her in. Don't force her down too hard, you don't want to split the cakes. Lift up her little hands, and we're going to take some of that frosting and we're just going to frost her into her dress. Kind of like being sewn into your dress, but a lot more delicious. Alright, there's Dora in her princess dress. She's been frosted in. Now I just want to go down here where I've done my crumb coat and just make sure that I can't see any of that brown coming through. Alright, so I'm going to give Dora a bit of a ruffle dress today. So for a ruffle, what you want to do is you want to take that rose piping tip, and I'm going to, with the smaller end of the tip facing forward and the large end of the tip facing back towards me, I'm going to start at her, I guess her belt, and I'm going to squeeze the piping bag. Go right and left and right and left and right and left and right and left, kind of folding that frosting. It's going to stick to that nice crumb coat that we've done. Take it all the way down to the board. So you can see there my lovely little ruffle. I'm going to do that all the way around. Alright, so I'm just finishing up my ruffling. Now, I do want to say with ruffling, I have only learned how to do this in the last few days, so don't think that you've got to be any kind of a professional or anything like that, or have been doing it for years to get a really great effect. I'm going to go around just the bottom and make sure that I have, I guess, I'm just going to do a little ruffle all the way around the bottom. So I'm not even really ruffling, I'm just squeezing out a bit of frosting and kind of shaking my hand around a little bit to fill in those gaps so that she's got a nice, even, nice solid seal there with the cake board. That's going to help stop her from slipping away. So guys, there you have your Dora the Explorer Giant Cupcake Princess Cake. I think you'll agree, she's really easy, a lot easier than you would think. She's turned out absolutely gorgeous, and I think that any Dora fan is going to be really excited to have one of those at her party. If you love our tutorials, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, My Cupcake Addiction. We'd love to see you stop by to check out the tutorials that we upload every week. Thanks very much for watching.